This October was the first anniversary of Israel-Hamas war, a terrorist attack that killed 1,200 people and took about 250 hostages. Since then, Israel has been on rampage, perpetrating death and destruction in Gaza and now in Lebanon. The world has described it as genocide. Hello, Namaskar. I'm Preeti Prakash, and today I have with me Ambassador Anil Trigunayat, who's been ambassador to Libya, Jordan, and Malta. He's been secretary to the Government of India, Ministry of External Affairs. Welcome, Ambassador Trigunayat.
Thank you.
The larger picture that I see is generally four dimensions to the war. One is the war itself. Second is the economy which is related to oil and the related inflation. Thirdly is the geopolitics of the war. And fourth, and the most important, is the humanitarian aspect, which no one is actually bothered about. Let me begin by asking Ambassador Trigunayat, where do you see the West Asia war heading after Israel and Hamas, Israel and Iran have now come in direct confrontation with each other, and Netanyahu and Hamas are not ready to relent from their respective positions?
Well, Preeti ji, as you listed the four dimensions, I think the fifth dimension also needs to be added. And in my view, that is the Palestinian issue, which is at the core of this whole thing. Hamas is an organization which calls itself as a resistance organization and has been ruling Gaza since after 2006. When the elections were held in Palestine, and since then they have been ruling. And they have been having fights and wars with Israel. We already saw about 4 or 5 of them already taken place. This was the fifth war, which started off on October 7th with the terrorist attacks on Israeli settlements and forces, and about 1,200 odd people were killed. That was the highest ever, unprecedented, and 251 hostages were taken. About 100 of them are still in the captivity of Hamas, being used as a key to some kind of a ceasefire or resolution. Now, in this war, the worst thing that we have seen is that the humanitarian aspect. We have so far more than 42,000 people, including children and women, have been killed in the war, according to various estimates. Although Israelis don't agree to that, they say more than half are actually the Hamas fighters. So, in response to this unprecedented attack by Hamas, Prime Minister Netanyahu and his ultra-rightist government decided that they will destroy Hamas for good. And that was their one single objective. We have seen over the years that although they have tried carpet bombing, they have killed, they have tunnels, and all kinds of things they've done. Despite that, Hamas is still very much part there. It has been no doubt decimated a great deal. They have been able to kill top leadership, including Ismail Haniyeh in Iran. And recently, the latest one, there's not much news about Yahya Sinwar, who's taken over. So at the same time, while this war has been going on, we have seen that USA, Qatar, and Egypt have been trying for some kind of a ceasefire. They did achieve a short ceasefire, which allowed the release of about 80 people from there. Some have been killed since then. And then this problem continues. Now, from October 7th, this happened. October 8th onwards, Hezbollah started putting pressure on Israel from its northern front. And because of that, the shelling that was going on constantly, even though it was low key, it was manageable. It was not something that was very disastrous. But the people of Israel in the northern area felt unsafe and they had to be relocated. Israel felt that its sovereignty over its own territory has been lost. That has been one of the causes. But then they did not want to take on till they have decimated Hezbollah, Hamas, to a great extent. In the meantime, the third edge, which is Houthis, they also came in support of Hamas and started attacking them. Now, so today we are at a point where Israel feels that it has substantially handled the Hamas. That is no longer a security priority for it. Even though on the October 7th, the Hamas also again attacked on Israel, some missiles they sent. But Hezbollah, which is the strongest of them all, I would say, the attack on or killing of the top leadership of Hezbollah, including their military leadership, was in a way redeeming them of their intelligence and IDF failure of October 7th. Mm-hmm. With such precision strikes, they were able to kill nearly everybody, not only Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of it, but also the second in command appears to have been killed. So significant leadership of Hezbollah has been killed. Now, this has two dimensions to it. One is, before I come to that, I must say that Iran, they are all part of the Iranian axis of resistance.
Yeah.
In a way, they call themselves as Iranian proxies or whatever. So they work, although it's not necessary that everything that they do is after taking clearance from Iran. That's also true. Because Hamas, when they carried out their attacks, Iranian handlers were not available, actually knew about it. So that is something that has happened. But Hezbollah was their main body, and which is very much works in concert with them, and were putting pressure on Israel also. But this was a tremendous success of Israel in terms of its operations, precision strikes which it has done. Now today what happened is, the objective of Israel in Lebanon is, and poor Lebanese are suffering because of that, is that to secure their northern border and to create some kind of a buffer zone, which will then removing Hezbollah from that completely. So that's why they have come into also with the ground invasion. And in this meantime, we have seen that after Ismail Haniyeh's attack, the killing in Tehran, when the new Iranian president, Dr. Pezeshkian, took over after his swearing-in ceremony, Ismail Haniyeh, who has been discussing the ceasefire throughout, through Qatar and others, so his killing actually was indicative of one fact, that possibly Israel was not interested in going ahead with the deal. And we had seen that every time both sides, Hamas was equally culpable, and both sides have been changing their goalposts as far as the ceasefire was concerned. So their ceasefire was not possible. Iran continued to support them. And today what we are looking at is that there is now, Iran was put in pressure, a lot of pressure internally. But it was basically persuaded by the West and by the Arab countries not to retaliate to Haniyeh's killing again, because Israel did not admit to killing him directly. So therefore, question of violation of sovereignty was not there. Everybody, those who are in the know of things or observe, they know that Haniyeh was on the top of the list, assassination list of Israel, and taking him out was their own thing. But for obvious reasons, strategic reasons and political reasons, diplomatic reasons, they did not till today claimed killing him. It will come out later. Now, Iran waited because Iran was given to understand that the ceasefire deal was on the cards. So from Iranian perspective, they could have said that our pressure, our patience, our strategic patience has led to the ceasefire deal. So Iran also were not interested in a direct fight with Israel for several reasons. One is domestic discord that is there, has been under sanctions. So obviously certain things have not worked out well. They had also lost their president recently to a helicopter attack. And there were a lot of vulnerabilities domestic. And Israeli penetration of its intelligence agency in Iran, in Lebanon, in Syria, and all these places is remarkable, and which has been borne out by the fact that the kind of operations that they have continued and all these things. So today, everybody is waiting with a bated breath. What kind of a response would Israel give to Iran? We have seen that Netanyahu spoke to the Iranian people, virtually asking them to engineer change. He also said that he is going to decimate Hezbollah completely or destroy it to the extent, so which means the Lebanese people are they are in the firing line of fire. And this situation, so it will depend on what kind of a response it
Mm.
gives the next steps. And
Next.
it's a very severe response because Iran had, launched about 181 uh,
Mm.
missiles at
Does,
four targets, despite being intercepted quite a lot of them. So that was a significant attack.
mm.
The response of that is obviously going to be there, but what kind of response is the major question.
Yes, yeah.
While perhaps the first priority was to take out the Iranian nuclear installation, one of them. Now,
Mm-hmm.
that is obviously Israel does not want Iran to be nuclear. That will provide Iran a priority of sorts.
Mm.
But the US president has said that not to go in that route. Now, there has been something whether he attacks some oil installations. Now, if he attacks oil installations, the other arm of Iranian proxies, which is Islamic militias in Iraq, are on record saying that if their oil attack takes place, then it will be other countries will also suffer the same fate by
Mm.
now, which means that you will have a disruption of the oil supply. Now, that is
Mm.
another thing which the world does not want at this stage to happen.
Yeah.
So, right now, there is a discussion. Yesterday, President Biden, I think, and Netanyahu spoke. And Biden, in the last days, is trying to exert some influence, which is unlikely. Uh,
Yeah.
I think Netanyahu knows very well, and he's waiting for the elections to happen, and possibly Trump will come so that he
Yeah.
can blanche to do whatever he pleases. But at
Yeah.
this, Iran is fighting several wars with several fronts, has been facing a lot of economic problems, its own industry, its own people. I mean, they are all quite fed up. Country is also divided significantly.
Yeah.
Uh, so Iran and Israel, as far as domestic situation is concerned, in my view, both are facing tremendous challenges domestically also.
Mm. So, coming back to this Israel thing, sorry, Iran thing. So today only I've read some news reports coming in that Iran has tested some nuclear thing at one of its places. So what is the possibility, of Iran using this nuclear kind of thing as these are reports from the media only?
Yeah, since Trump withdrew from the nuclear deal in 2018, I think,
Mm.
what we have seen is that Iran has used this time to continue to enrich uranium. And there are several reports. Some say they have already reached the threshold, 90% of
Mm.
they can make some kind of weapon system. I will not be surprised if they already have some weapons. We don't know. There was some report I read somewhere that they had bought some from Pakistan also, ready.
Mm.
So it is
I mean,
also
even I think North Korea.
so, so there is. It is not that they can do because some statements have come from their leadership in Iran that now after this our response will be non-conventional. So which
Hmm.
thoughts. So that is that is, as they say, pregnant with a lot of surprises. So one doesn't know how Iran will react. If
Mm.
I mean, we have seen on in April, if you remember, that when Israel attacked the Iranian consulate, killing 7 IRGC officials, senior commanders in Damascus. That time, Iran took some time, but it did retaliate. It sent about 300 odd missiles and drones over Iran, attacking some places. But it had already shared the information
Yeah.
about its attack. And then Israel also did some kind of a reciprocal retaliation. On the other hand, here this time also I understand that Iran had shared this information that they are going to do this with the country. So if it is going to be in a way stage managed, then the conflict can be contained within the Lebanon Hezbollah border, Hezbollah Israel and Hamas and Israel. But
Mm.
not, then it can just conflate into a regional war.
Hmm. Uh, now there is this very different kind of a dynamics between the Arab countries and Iran. and Israel. So if the truce does not work, which presently again I've heard that these Arab countries are working for a truce so that Iran does not somehow for any reason attack their oil installations, which it has already said that in case of a if in case America attacks Iran, then they will attack the oil installations of other Arab countries. So if no truce works out, suppose, and both sides don't relent, then how do you see this unfolding? And I'd like you to tell our audience about this dynamics between the Arab countries and Iran and Israel.
Traditionally, since 1979, at least 45 years, once the Iran became an Islamic Republic and this Ayatollahs came into power, we have seen that the Shia-Sunni divide has been accentuated. Now, Saudi Arabia is is a custodian of two holy mosques, the leader of the Muslim world, Islamic world, to a great extent. And then Iran claims to be the Shia leader in the world. Now we have seen that this kind of a geo-religious contestation has continued. And in order to improve its capabilities, Iran helped create these three H's that we talked about, Houthis, Hamas, and Hezbollah. Ironically, Hamas, sustenance of Hamas was done by the Israelis. Hezbollah was created after the 1982 war when Israel invaded Lebanon. So there is an Israeli connect to even these creation of these groups to some extent, one way or the other, ironically. And today they are all fighting one another. As far as Arab countries are concerned, so they continue to have these contestations. Big power competition continues. United States had all the Arab countries with it and was against Iran. And the Iran and Russia and China became far more closer in the process. And Syria, Lebanon, and all those countries which are there. So Iran has these proxies which gives this one a sort of a asymmetric advantage vis-a-vis Israel and vis-a-vis the other countries. Now these Arab countries of late, after they heard that the United States was distracted because of the Russia-Ukraine war, because of its problems in the Indo-Pacific, they started thinking that let us try to work out some kind of a modus vivendi within the region. Mm-hmm. And therefore, they signed an agreement between Saudi Arabia and Iran, if you remember. Then in China, they had done it, and it is going on very well. Iran, UAE, and Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Iran have very good relations, and embassies also. Throughout the blockade and others, Iran and UAE and others have continued to work together. Qatar and Iran are very close. And Qatar and Iran actually share the biggest gas field. Both sides exploit it. Now, there are most of the countries within the region, whether it's Turkey, Egypt, or others, they are all trying to improve the relationship. On the other hand, there is another trend of improvements with Israel. And that was the Abraham Accords, if you remember. Now, those were the ones which were engineered by United States, especially President Trump. And he got them to sign this with Israel, Bahrain, and UAE, and later on Morocco and Sudan. So 4 countries. Very recently, we had seen after, if you remember, in September 2023, when we hosted the G20 summit and the IMEC corridor was inaugurated, Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, said that their normalization with Israel was on fast track. Mm-hmm. After that, on October 7th, which was hardly few days, 10 days, you saw this attack happen. The reason of this attack was one, that most of the Arab countries were giving only pro forma sympathy to the Palestinian cause. And the problem was just made out to be between Hamas and Israel, between Palestine, from PLO and Israel, rather than earlier it used to be an Arab war. So it was no longer the same. So once the normalization under Abraham Accords happened, so there was a feeling among the most countries in the region that if Saudi Arabia also normalizes relations with Israel, in that context, that then the cause of Palestine is lost for the good.
Mm.
That is why Hamas, one of the main reasons for them, apart from internal problems, weaknesses of the Israeli system and all that, this was one of the main reasons to completely put a stop to this, as well as all other. So this has been partly successful in that, because normalization has now been predicated on two-state solution. For example, so
Mm.
there should be a Palestinian state now for Saudi Arabia. So there have been red lines have been once again redrawn. The cause of Palestine has been recharged on the Arab street level. Earlier, it was only leaders of the countries talking, but the
Mm.
people may want a different thing. That's
Mm.
what is happening. So today, but one thing I must say that many of the Arab countries would not be unhappy about Hamas being cut down to size, Hezbollah cut to size, or Houthis cut to size. Because at the end of the day, the strategic parity with
Yeah.
Iran is also something they are seeking,
Mm.
irrespective of their own, you know, some kind of a normalcy coming about in their relations.
Mm. So
But
in this, sorry.
lastly, there was in the wake of this attack, possible attack between Israeli attack on Iran now in response to the Iranian attack, there was a meeting with the GCC and Iran in Doha, where President Pezeshkian had gone there, and the GCC countries have pledged to bury all their differences with Iran and assured them that in this war between Iran and Israel, they will be neutral and they will not allow the bases on them, on their countries, to be used against Iran. So
Mm.
that's the situation currently.
Mm. That's a good situation for, in fact, the world itself also. So, talking of Iran, um, do you think that Iran is somehow, kind of struggling to maintain its image as a leader in the Islamic world, or is it losing? What in that scenario, what will be Iran's strategy?
Well, I think that what happened is that when, you know, howsoever the Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh was killed, or the Iranian scientists, or their nuclear facilities were attacked in a clandestine manner, which goes to show that they might have the firepower. For example, they can hit missiles and all that, but their internal systems have seemed to be have been penetrated both
Hmm.
in Lebanon, Syria in Hezbollah's network by Israelis and in
Hmm.
Iran by
Yeah,
Israelis.
we
Which is
just saw that by these killings and
so
how Mossad is there everywhere in
and this
Iran's top echelons.
yes, and this is why you can say that Iran is worried to that extent.
Mm.
So, but at the same time, Iran has been projecting itself to be a pole in the region, and there,
Mm.
with the kind of missiles it has, kind of nuclear capabilities is developing, I think that it feels that it has to stay there. Plus, it
Mm.
the Israel, as I call it, as suffering both sides from the MAD syndrome, literally a
Mm.
destruction syndrome.
Mm.
That Iran wants to maintain its parity. It wants to maintain its supremacy both as a religious leader as well as a major power. And it, of course, in terms of oil, it produces about 12% of the global output.
Mm. Absolutely. Okay, now shifting gear to a little different place, US elections. How do you think this war is playing out and will play out in the US elections?
Well, the thing is that as far as Kamala Harris is concerned,
Mm.
she's very likely to follow what policies are there Biden has followed. That means it's a dualistic policy, which is a bit, in a way, double standard. On the one hand, they say that the war should stop, there should be a ceasefire. They're making all efforts. Their Secretary Blinken came about 9 times, I believe, to the region.
Yeah.
Biden himself dashed to the region and advised Netanyahu against land invasion.
Mm.
And not only here, he's also going land invasion into Lebanon now.
Mm.
But what has this war done is something very interesting. It was an unintended consequence, I believe. For the first time, we are witnessing in the United States, which is driven by largely by the Jewish lobby. The Jewish lobby really controls the systems in the country, and they continue to support Israel's complete defense. So that is their fundamental policy. The USA will stand irrespective of the president. But then you have Kamala Harris might not be that sanguine about continuity. Plus, there might be war fatigue setting in because of Russia-Ukraine war, because of Israel-Hamas war, because having fingers in too many pies. So the Arab lobby in that area has also increased a lot. And we have seen these demonstrations and protests taking place in various universities and other places. And the vote segment, which is in some of these swing states where Muslim population is there, may not go for Kamala Harris, but then they may not also like to vote for Trump because Trump is very much openly supportive of Netanyahu and his policies. So it is like Kua Khai wali baat, that they will be Muslim votes will be divided in that sense. But at the same time, it definitely is impacting to some extent this particular war. Although Americans generally are immune from geography, they don't care much about the international events so much, but they're not thinking directly themselves. The Vietnam War was a different thing when they had seen last. Afghanistan was another one, which was a war on terror. But here it is a war that's supporting indirectly and through whatever technical means they can, arms, ammunition, and technical experts.
Okay. Now with this conflict gone too far, India's approach has generally been, that diplomacy and dialogue, should go together, which in this situation, even though Prime Minister Modi has many times, has every time he's met Netanyahu and the Iranian president also, he said this to them also, that diplomacy and dialogue should be the main tenet. So, but we can only see this working see our interests protected. How we have to see how our interests are being protected there. Particularly, our interests are in the energy sector and in in our people, which is there. So, how do you look at this?
Well, I think that the fundamental objective of any foreign policy is to secure your national interests. And since today India is also a major player in the world, therefore, ipso facto, everybody expects you to play a role, some kind. And so we have, like Russia-Ukraine war, we have taken a position, principled position to a great extent. And as you mentioned, dialogue, diplomacy, peace, respect for UN Charter, because there it was territorial integrity was involved of Ukraine. So we continue to maintain that. And now we are playing a more active role there, as you can see. Prime Minister himself has traveled to both the places. But Middle East is a very different ballgame altogether. It is the most important region from India's point of view. For our own security and safety, it is important. So the stability and security in the Middle East is extremely critical for our own growth story. Number one, you have all these major sea lanes of communication, maritime routes, which pass through there. And if there is a war that takes place, they will come under stress. We have already seen what Houthis have done in the very recent times, since November, October, November. Then our energy security, 55-60% of energy comes from the region, even though we are now importing much more from Russia. And then economic dimension of our relationship. There are a lot of investments from both sides. India has thousands of companies in the region which are doing it. They are our third and fourth largest trading partners. We have a comprehensive economic partnership agreement with them. And they are investing in India in a big way also. So that will also be stressed. IMEC corridor, I already told you, is already under stress. But the most important thing for us is if the war really breaks out across, then what to do with our 9.5 million people who are there, how to secure their welfare. And therefore, it is very important. That's the reason Prime Minister Modi has spoken to Netanyahu He said, let's not, we should not, take the war to the next level. Jaishankar had traveled to Iran, so we keep talking to. Now I'm sure Prime Minister Modi will meet Iranian president in Kazan next week, third week of October in BRIC summit. This is what India is doing. Now we don't have any enforcement possibility of the war. The only country that has the possibility of affecting the outcome of this war is United States.
Yeah.
And United States is distracted both by domestic issues and by international issues. Now they don't know what to do with the Russia-Ukraine war.
Yeah.
They have dragged it to 3 years. Russia looks good at the moment. They are in this war. They don't know how to contain Israel because Netanyahu refuses to listen to them.
And US is ostensibly has been taken side.
Yes.
Yeah.
So nobody else is there who can really impact the war. This is unfortunate. Secondly, in both the wars, you can see something that defiance of the international law.
Absolutely.
Nobody cared about what international law is or what is the humanitarian law is there. They just
yeah, absolutely.
down system today. So that's the issue, I believe, that the world has to cope up with. And India is just trying to weigh it carefully so that its own interests are not severed and impacted badly.
Okay, now how do you see the war affecting geopolitics? I mean, suppose there is a war. Naturally, US is supporting Israel. And Iran will obviously be looking then for some support from some allies. So how do you see it? Naturally, we see China, Russia, and the Arab countries as one bloc. They'll definitely take sides. So how will this unfold,
Most of the Arab countries don't want to get caught into this war. Except the other Arab country like Syria and Lebanon. So there will be sympathies with them. They would like this Lebanon invasion to be stopped at the earliest, everybody. So that's the Arab countries have said it. Americans also have understood it. But as I said, the Americans seem distracted. The power appears limited. Now, suppose the war happens, really, and the United States, UK, they will be standing with Israel. And if
Europe, in fact, United States and Europe also, in fact.
Whole of Europe, I think, but if it becomes a NATO thing, then they have to be. Otherwise, France thinks differently. Many thinks differently. So the different countries have their different viewpoints. It's in a way divided lot. But they back. So you have here Russia and China and North Korea. So there is a sort of a grouping, collaborative, which exists, in which Russia probably will be very quick in supporting Iran because Iran is also supporting Russia in its war.
Yeah.
At the moment, Russia wants the war not to escalate because it also has a lot of interest in the region.
It's fighting its own war also. Yeah.
China doesn't want it to escalate.
Yeah.
But it all depends on the US stance, how much it can control one end of the bargain. So that's the reason. And I think that if that happens, then you have these countries coming in favor of Iran, one way or the other.
That scenario doesn't look really very good, although.
That means they are looking for an all-out world war.
All out, yeah. And everyone, I'm sure the international community will try their best it does not escalate.
Yeah, right.
And particularly not the nuclear part of it. Okay. So till now, Israel has Netanyahu. What do you think? What has Israel has actually achieved by all this, except destruction and killings? Has Israel achieved anything out of all that it is doing?
Personally, I feel that Israel is not more secure than it was on October 6th. It has become more insecure in a way. What it's trying to do is, there are several theories. Started with the simple revenge retribution kind of a thing. And eventually you have to find justification for those. Now, likes terrorism in the world. India also condemned the terror attacks of October 7th. There is no problem about that. The fighting against terrorism, we have been fighting against for 4 decades against terrorism, cross-border terrorism from Pakistan. But in this case, there are people who say that probably Israel wants to occupy Gaza.
But do you think earlier to October 7 also they had this at all this plan or idea of occupying Gaza? I think it was all triggered by October 7.
Indirectly, if you come to think of it, they have not recognized the Palestinian state.
Mm-hmm.
So the one way or the other, they are under the control of the Israeli police army and everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Hamas has been ruling in Gaza. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But there are three types of security perimeters that the Israelis enforce on different zones. There are zones which have been created in Palestine, which is now Palestine. So there is one place called Ramallah and all that. There is the capital of Palestine. Now, current capital. They want East Jerusalem as their capital. Now, in that place, there is something called Zone A. Zone A means that the local Palestinian police or whatever will do that, but overall security is right. Zone B, then where there is Israeli police is also equal. And then Zone C, where Israeli police completely controls
Mm-hmm.
security and management of it, where you have most of the um, settlements that have taken place. So I have written about it that Gaza will perhaps be Zone D.
Mm.
Possible, but at the same time, uh, technically they feel it's part of Israel, right? And therefore they can reoccupy it. It's not going to be that easy. It's going to be,
Mm.
but a lot of people have been going around. But you can see that the Palestinians, though they have been killed, but they have refused to leave the country.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm.
So that's a very peculiar situation. Now in Gaza, in Lebanon, their objective is basically, as I said, is to, in my view, reacquire their sovereignty over their own territory
Mm.
in northern Lebanon, so
Mm.
that people can return to the border area and live safely.
Mm.
So they want to basically, after decapitating the leadership of Hezbollah, now they want to decimate their firepower.
Mm.
If they go in and they start fighting like this, today you have a guerrilla warfare. It might happen. And my fear is that now, if these countries, now we are already seeing the stabbing events, somebody shooting somewhere independently. If that kind of a thing happens, then what we are looking at is long-term guerrilla warfare.
Mm.
It's possible that the Palestinians may restart their intifada again, which
Mm.
Israel will be in the long haul with these people at the popular level. And that
Mm.
is all very difficult to win for any country in the world.
Mm. Also, we have seen that despite so many world opinion going against Israel and people coming out in support of Palestinians, nothing really has affected the political class, whether in US or in Israel. Also, don't you agree to this?
I think that Israel feels that it has existential threat.
Mm.
Uh, Due to this existential threat concept, it thinks that till it has secured itself fully, it is
Mm.
to listen to anybody.
Mm.
And this is the understanding, in my view, they have reached with the Americans also. Because the American statement is dualistic. One way they are saying that we stand with the complete defense of Israel, in defense of Israel. They have a right to defend. On the other hand, they say there should be some kind of a ceasefire. In this Hezbollah thing, I believe that there was a statement by the press office, I think President Biden's, who said, we want them to go against the Hezbollah. So, on the one hand, you're fighting the trouble. On the other,
Mm.
you're trying to squash it. That doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's actually precarious. So now my last question is on intelligence. Now, even Iran has that Iron Dome, but still it was penetrated by Iranians last we've seen. Second is the intelligence of Iran. Now, if Israel has been able to penetrate inside and kill Hezbollah leader and maybe even their other, the 3H's one. So that goes to prove that Iran's intelligence is also a failure.
Yes, of course. This is what I said, that Iran's domestic vulnerabilities are something which is a cause of worry for them.
Hmm.
People discontent, but also
Mm.
is failure in the country.
Mm.
Same time, you have to also grant them that they were able to hit three missiles
Mm.
the two air bases and the Mossad headquarters.
Hmm.
So Iran and Israel both have had this intelligence failure.
Hmm.
Israel has redeemed it very quickly over time
Hmm.
and has been able to show it by killing the main leadership and all that of Hamas as well as the Hezbollah and
Hmm.
the Houthis as well.
Hmm.
So that if there are deficiencies, and in Iran, that's a big worry for them also. They have firepower. There is
Hmm.
no doubt about it. Iran has rather huge missiles and drone capacities that can create a major problem. So,
Hmm.
if you call, I mean, I think that there are failures on both sides.
Mm. And Israel, which is so famous for its intelligence, I think they have the top-notch intelligence for that matter.
No, October 7 was complete failure of the.
Absolute failure. Yeah, yeah.
So that happens. So, but what I am saying is Iron Dome and all, they are all, nothing is foolproof in this world.
Mm.
You see, there is no system that can take care of 100%.
Mm. Uh,
But at the same time, it's a very effective system, which is there.
mm.
And
Yeah.
there's three-layered system.
Uh, okay. Middle East is sitting on a power keg, ready to blow up any time and turn into World War III. And as we discussed today, if Netanyahu is not reined in, the war is here to stay. Thank you so much, Ambassador Trigunayat, for giving me time and talking to us and sharing your valuable views. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you.